Yep, that's right. Yep. Oh, by the way, did you hear? Yeah, Peachy Tips. It's got 40,000 subscribers now. I know. It's wild. It's wild. No, I don't want fries with that. No, no, that's it. Yep, just a meal deal. Yeah, all right. Thank you very much. Yeah, yeah. All right, you put the phone down. No, you. Oh, you put the phone down. Oh, rude. So, 40,000 subscribers. Wow. When I started this in what, March, I was aiming for 20. I mean, even then I thought that was a bit too much. I was being greedy. So, amazing. Thank you so much for your support and watching the channel and listening to me waffle on about all sorts of nonsense. I mean, initially, I had these notions of doing just like some paint guides and stuff like that. It's just evolved into talking about different games, doing some battle reports. More will be on the way of battle reports. It just takes a bit of time to sort myself out when I make those, and there are more planned for 2025. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting me and listening to me waffle on and make all sorts of weird content about, well, a bit of everything. I mean, initially it started off as just paint guides and talking about like Warhammer stuff I like, and then it's just amalgamated into talking about miniatures in general and all these other cool games that I'm experiencing, and miniature ranges as well. So it was meant to be a thank you video, but I thought I'd turn it into a bit of a paint guide as well. And I was like, what should I paint? What can I paint? I was like, ooh, Kill Team. They got the new Ratlings coming out, Ratling Snipers. They look quite cool. I'll paint some of those. I'll get hold of a set and ignore the Games Workshop embargo and just do it early. Then I realised, not on the list. Oh well. But doesn't matter, because War Games Atlantic do their sneak feet. So I will paint them up instead, because they're kind of cool. They look like halflings and you get twice as many, and it's a bit cheaper. Now, I love Games Workshop models, always have and will do for a long time to come. I mean, I was there for 20 plus years. Of course I'm going to love their stuff. But in these belt tightening times, sometimes you've got to look at alternatives. And one of the companies I use a lot now is War Games Atlantic. They do some very 40k adjacent stuff, as well as a load of other random things, fantasy stuff, historical stuff. My very first set was a set of riflemen, very famous set of riflemen from a particular TV show. If you've watched the channel, you know exactly what I'm on about. If you haven't, you might want to watch a few episodes back. But regardless, I really rate their plastics. Whether you are after Jason the Argonaut, skeletons, zombies, werewolves, or beasties for Silver Bayonet, or you want some not Catachan jungle fighters or not Praetorian Guard, they've got you covered. They've got everything. They've got fantasy ogres. They've even got like World War II, World War I stuff. So there's a lot of cool kits out there available, and they're all interchangeable as well. Now the sneak feet, which are their Ratling snipers, also mix quite well with their other Deathfields range as well. So whether that's the Grognards, which look a little bit like Deathcore, or the not jungle fighters, Reptilian Overlords, whatever they're called, they are quite interchangeable, which I really like. So you can have a bit of play around with the head swaps and this, that, and the other. So that is great. Also, just in case anyone is like in the comments getting all sassy, this isn't sponsored by War Games Atlantic. I just really like their products. It's as simple as that. And I'm going to talk about them and then paint some figures and then, you know, just waffle on a bit. That's what I do. You know that by now. If you've been watching this, there's 40,000 of you apparently. You know this. So this is how I've made my video about hitting 40,000 subscribers, 40,000 adjacent, by painting up some not Ratling snipers. I'm going to be painting up two colour schemes. One, which will kind of cover, I suppose, this stuff on the box art. It's not a nice generic sort of camo-y kind of colour scheme. And the other one is if you're after a little bit more ostentatious outfits of the mighty Ventrilia. I also mix some parts from the Grognard set as well. So they get like cool sort of French-esque heads, whether that's like Grenadier, Old Guard, furry bearskin heads, or just like Shaco heads, or like other World War II, World War I heads. There's so many selections, and you have gas mask or not gas mask. You get a lot of heads actually when I think about it in those sets. So if you are just after like replacement heads, I mean, just look at some of the sprues. There's so many choices. But yes, I'm going to paint up a Ratling sniper, and I'm going to call him Balbo Biggins. So first up is to get some olive drab, and what we're going to do with this is do some dry brushing. So I'm just going to load up my brush a little bit and then just rub off on some tissue paper, wood or card, whatever you want to do. I just have tissue paper at hand, wipe as much off as you can, and then just gently flick that over the model. This is going to highlight all the cloth, all the areas we want green, but it doesn't matter if you get it on other areas because we'll paint over that soon enough. Then I'm going to get some dark wood, and what I'm going to do is pick out any leather details. So that's going to be like pouches and straps and stuff like that. Maybe the hair once I've got some flesh on, but Right now, I have no flesh on, so I'm just going to pick out those straps. And again, doesn't matter if you're a bit messy here, because we can just tidy it with that olive drab, which is great. Yeah, working around the back, again, just find those straps. Because it's a thin paint as well, it will flow into the cracks a bit, which is good because it helps give you like some edges, but also double-edged sword, it can leak a little bit, so that's why I'm just tidying up a bit here. It's not a big problem, really. The beauty of paint, just tidy up if you make a mistake. Then I'm going to get some blacks. This is grim black. Again, any black will do, whether that's thinned down matte black or something else. I'm just going to apply this to the trousers. You can do a couple of coats, or you can leave it as it is, so it's like a bit of a greeny black. It's entirely up to you. Just work your way around, pick out the trousers. And of course, I'm going to do the entire gun as well here. Two reasons for that. One, I want the gun case in black, but also any areas I'm going to be painting like silvers and stuff, the blacks and the cracks, so it saves me having to go into all those nooks and crannies with the silver. I can just like pick out the raised areas instead, which speeds things on along a little, and also just looks a bit nicer. Then for his cap, I'm going to get something called Camo Cloak. That's really just because I wanted a slightly different colour for the cap, bit of a military green, so I just worked my way around on that. And I'm also going to use that same colour for his thermos flask, but I might do something later on with that after I've washed it all to make it a little bit different, so it doesn't look like it's made from the same material. Then it's a matter of just picking out the skin. Again, whatever skin colour you want to use, it's entirely up to you. I've just got some barbarian flesh here. Because this is going straight over that green undercoat, I'm probably going to want to do a couple of coats of it, but it's not really the end of the world. Once that first coat's dry, all you need to do is then just apply the second. I mean, I'm picking out his feet and the hair because, well, I'll paint the hair separately later, but I'm just going to get it base coated with flesh first. Makes a lot more sense that way. And again, just do a second coat. If the first coat is still showing some of that green through, again, you know, those dresses. Usually, if there's still a little bit shown after this point, when you do the all-over wash and you like tidy back up, it's not going to be noticeable, so don't stress it too much. Then I'm going to pick out any silver bits. Again, because I've got all that black on there already, I can just concentrate on the areas I really do want silver. So like for instance on the barrel here, I can just pick out those raised areas, and then in the recesses, it's already shaded for me. So I can just save myself a little bit of time, especially if I'm doing like a bigger unit, like 5 or 10 or something like that. And then just pick out any of the details you want silver. Again, I was just making up as I was painting this because, well, it's a sci-fi gun, isn't it? I'm not sure if it's real, but paint whatever looks silver. Then pick out things like the belt buckle, the thermos flask. So I've got like a handle on the thermos flask. There's also the little, I guess, tea mug, the drinking vessel part of it. Now, if you did make mistakes when you were doing the buckles, I mean, you could just paint them silver entirely. You can just get some of that dark wood and just reapply it over. And at this point, you can then add that to areas that might be hairy, like his little feet, little hairy feet. Next up, I'm going to get some Tundra Taupe. I'm just going to pick out some of the piping, I guess, on his jacket, as well as his cuffs, a slightly different colour. When it's washed and highlighted, it will just be a little bit more subtle, but I just thought it'd help break the shape up a little bit, so it's not all just like a flat green. It adds a little bit of difference to it. Maybe it's a little bit more stain around the edges, or it's just worn a bit more there, or it's just different material. But I thought I'd just pick them out. Again, the cuffs as well. And then it's a matter of coating it in a wash of your choice. I like strong tone, so I'm just going to apply that all over. I use an old brush to start off with. I apply it quite heavily, move it around, getting all those nooks and crannies, just to make sure it's like completely swamped in places, because I want it to flow down as well. Doesn't matter if it's a bit bubbly, that's fine. And I get a slightly smaller brush, and I'm just a little bit more accurate, move things into the cracks where it needs it, soak things up away from certain areas if it's a bit too pulled in there. So I just go around, take my time, and just soak up any excess I don't need. And you can leave your model once it's dry at that, and just base it and play games. It's entirely up to you. However, if you want to take it to the next step, then what we're going to do now is do some highlighting. So I'm going to get a bit of olive drab. After that shade's obviously been applied, this is going to look a bit lighter. I'm going to also highlight up that Tundra Taupe as well, because then it kind of ties it in with the jacket a bit more, but it makes those areas look a little bit more stained or weathered, or whatever effect I was aiming for. I've got an old army jacket, and some areas are a little bit more, look a little bit different around the cuffs and like the edges and stuff. That's what I was aiming for. I'm not sure what the material is, but a bit more waterproof maybe, don't know. But anyway, I'm going around picking out the highlights. I think it just breaks up a little bit and looks kind of cooler. And of course you've got like little bits of piping around the back of the sleeves, and of course around his back, so I'm just going to pick those out as well. Anything really that's green, I was just going to highlight here, so that includes the hat as well. Yeah, work your way around, take time. Now the Tundra Taupe I use for that piping, I'm also going to use as a highlight for the brown. So it's not just a random colour I decided to pull out of a hat. I did have a purpose for it as well. So I'm just going to work my way around, pick out the leather, just picking out the edges, do some little scratches if I want to as well. make it look a little bit more battered and worn. I quite like scratchy leather. I think that's wicked. It's up to you how you want to highlight. You could do a broad highlight over the entire strap, so it's just a solid colour, or you can just pick the edges out. It's entirely up to you. On the straps themselves, I just did it as a broad colour. And if you think it needs a bit more punch, just get some of that dark wood and drop it into some of those deeper recesses. And again, if the hair needs a bit more punch, or if it's a bit wishy-washy, then you can just go back over with a second coat. Now I'm going to tidy up the skin, so I'm going to get that barbarian flesh first, because that all over shades just made it a little bit darker, so I can just get myself an extra bit of a highlight and tone from this same colour. So I'm just picking out any extremities, cheeks, nose, brows, the usual knuckles, fingers, maybe even the odd vein on his hand. Obviously don't forget his toeses as well. Got little toeses. But yeah, work your way around picking those areas. He's also got some nice sculpted toes, by the way, with some nails. It's up to you if you want to pick the nails out. I can be a little bit lazy, especially from an army painting point of view, and I don't bother. Then I'm going to get some amber skin. I'm going to use this as a highlight, so any areas I want a little bit more definition on, so lips, cheeks, nose, knuckles, etc. I'm just going to do a slightly thinner highlight than I did previous with that barbarian flesh, just so it adds a little bit more definition and gradient to it as well. And again, if you make mistakes, you just go back with the previous colour, correct it, come back. It's as easy as that. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to do with this armband he's got, so I thought I'd go for a happy colour and decided to do it like a sky blue. Thought, why not? Instead of something a little bit more insidious with armbands, it's always dangerous painting them. So I went blue, thought, yep, that can be like his squad or his division or platoon. Maybe the other ones have got yellow, maybe some have got like different greens or oranges. And then, of course, I'm going to highlight his trousers. I'm going to get some deep grey. I'm just going to pick out any folds that are sticking out. And also here, I'm just going to get some metal and just pick out some highlights. So make it look a bit chipped on his rifle. So I'm not being super precious about that. And then I'm just going to coat over with a little bit of grim black. That's just going to knock those silver highlights back a little bit, so they're not like fresh looking chips or anything like that. A bit more worn and battered and weathered. And then those highlights were a bit punchy in places, so I just thinned down a little bit of grim black and just went over. When it comes to thinning down, I usually a paintbrush of each, paintbrush of grim black and a paintbrush of water or whatever medium you have. Also, at that consistency, it's really good if you go around, if you think some areas need a little bit more definition, like the hand to the sleeve, or some of your deeper recesses aren't dark enough, you can just go around. Some people call it pin wash, I just call it sort of a recess shade or fine lining. There's no right or wrong way of describing it. I also use the grim black as well on his thermos flask, just to make it look a little bit different from his hat. So that helped bridge the gap between those two materials. And then finally, to make it feel a little bit more hobbity, a little bit more halflingy, I decided to get some red. I used Carmine Dragon here, thinned it down, a paintbrush of water and a paintbrush of Carmine Dragon, and all I'm doing here is just applying that to his nose, so it looks a little bit more ruddy, around his lips, maybe under his eyes. You can even do it on his cheeks. If he's a bit of a brawler, you can even put it on his knuckles if you want. It's up to you. So there we are. Balbo Biggins, our not rattling sniper, is ready. So as paint guides go, it wasn't particularly taxing. It was fairly straightforward, certainly from a colour scheme. So if you don't want that and you want something a little bit more ostentatious, a little bit over the top, then we have Hubert Featherbottom Rumblebelly, Esquire of Ventrilia up next. And I'm just going to paint him in kind of like, it could be a Praetorian, it could be a Ventrillian. So stick with me for that one, with a French hat, obviously. Now I'm starting from a grey undercoat. Any undercoat would do really. I just wanted to use grey because it's a nice mid-tone. And the first colour I'm going to use is a red. So get whatever red you want, but I'm using Wyvern Fury here for his jacket. I'm just going to coat all over. I'm not going to be super neat at this point because like the straps and trousers and stuff I can paint over later. That's fine because that's the beauty of paint. Also, I'm not going to miss out on his little feather, plume, what you want to call it. Next is to get some black. So I'm going to coat over all the details pretty much that I want black. So like the hat, the gas mask, the gun, the trousers. And we're quite frivolous with this as well. So I'm just going to quite heavily apply it. That's the thing about contrast paints as well, or speed paints, is they do apply a little bit different than like normal paints. I tend to swamp the area and then move it around. Unlike with a layer paint or a base paint, you tend to gently apply that over the surface area and do a couple of thin coats. This, I kind of swamp it on and move it around. Now in some places there's a little bit of red shown through from like where I've been a bit messy. That's fine because I'll do a second coat which will more than likely hide that, depending on like how thin it is or if you've used it straight from the pot or whatever. So I'm just doing that now. Sometimes I like to apply it a little bit thinner because as it dries it pulls away from the edges. Another reason for using a grey undercoat, it gives you a bit of a highlight. But yeah, if you've made a few splodges, then just a second coat would hide it. Or just black straight from the pot where you may have made a mess. you've gone a bit too heavy-handed. Right, next up is to paint any white details. So I want my Ventrillian Noble-esque Ratling to have obviously white straps and white pouches because it fits in nicely. Again, I've got a grey undercoat here, so that's going to help with that. Depending on how heavy-handed you were with the red, some of these areas are going to be red. And that's fine because a couple of thin coats of just this white or brigade grey that I've got as an off-white. Once I apply that over those straps that have been base coated red, you won't even notice it, especially once you've done a wash as well. The thing with these Army Painter paints is they've got decent pigment in them as well, so one coat usually ends up just about doing it. Sometimes you could do with a second coat, depending on like here, I'm doing white over red. Sometimes it needs a little bit of a second coat, but most of the time they're really punchy colours and one coat is more than enough. Well, of course, gun strap, can't forget that. Do that a nice white colour as well. Just channeling my inner Napoleonic vibes and Ventrillian vibes here, that's all. He's also got some nice knot work around his shako, so if you don't know anything about Napoleonics, don't worry, just pick out the colours however you want to. You can always just look at like a Frenchman's hat, shako they're known as, and then use that as a guide. If I did like something like a grenadier, this would all be red, but I'm just doing it white because it kind of sets off nicely with the other areas on the model. Then it's a matter of picking out any silvers, so I'm getting some gun metal, just picking out the belt buckle. I'm going to work on some details on the gun as well. Very similar because it's exactly the same design as the last guy. So the gun's exactly the same. So all I'm going to do is just pick out the areas the same way I did on the last one. I mean, it's up to you, you can do it differently. Normally, when my Ventrillian nobles, I tend to give him gold guns. He's not a true Ventrillian, so he doesn't get a gold gun. He's not allowed it. He's just a regimental chef, isn't he? Just looks a bit pretty. A pretty regimental chef. I mean, that's what Ratlings are, really. They're just good at like shooting and good at cooking. That's why they have them. I mean, technically they're abhumans, so they'd probably kill them normally if you're an abhuman. But these guys have got some culinary skills. Of course, there's the gas mask as well, so don't forget to pick that out. And then I'm going to move on to gold, so still keeping my metallics. I'm going to get some greedy gold and apply that over the eagle design, the Ventrillian eagle. That's what that is. It's not at all a French eagle, just in case anyone's wondering. Of course, there's the chin straps as well, so I'm going to pick those out. The pom-pom at the top, this little sort of round little thing, I wasn't quite sure what to do with that, so I thought I'll pick out gold first and then see how the mood takes me. I can always paint over that later if I want to use the same colour as the cuffs. Just go around picking out any like strapping areas or like detailed areas in gold. And there's some like almost like V shapes, sort of almost vertical. So I'm just going to pick those out. Then I'm going to pick out any cuffs using some sky blue. So that's the same sky blue I used on the Ratling's sleeve that he had. That little armband he had. I'm just doing the same thing here. I've noticed this one doesn't have an armband, so maybe it's a rank thing. I don't know. Decided to pick out that pom-pom as well with a little bit of sky blue. I thought just picking it out in the centre there, it just helped balance out between the sleeves a little bit. So that's why I did that. Then next up, I'm going to pick out any flesh details. So that's going to be using some paratrooper tan this time. This goes over like colours a little bit better. So if you're having trouble with the barbarian flesh in the first one, then I'd recommend moving to paratrooper tan instead because it's got better coverage. So you start with that first and you can always highlight back up or layer back up with some barbarian flesh. But yeah, just going around, picking out the feet, the hands. Don't need to worry about his face because it's covered in a gas mask. Then I'm going to wash all over using some strong tone. Again, I like using strong tone. I like applying it all over. It's an army painting technique I've done for years. It works really well. Some people are against like all over washes. It's just what I'm used to. It's what I like doing. It's a godsend. Gets all that definition, paints all those shadows for you. And when it's dry, you can literally leave the model at that. If you feel like you want to add to it, you can always tidy back up, which I'm going to do in a moment. But for the most part, if you're on a budget of time or you just don't want to do any more, just leave it at that. It just takes a little while to dry. And like the other one as well, I'm just soaking up any excess using a slightly smaller brush. So what I'm going to do now is just tidy up those areas. So I'm going to get the colour I use for base coats and just pick out some of those raised areas. So like on the jacket here, just add a little bit more punch because you're getting some extra definition from that slightly darker toned version of it from having that wash all over. So just work your way around picking those out. And again, you can also add a little bit of highlight in here as well if you need to. So like on the sleeves and stuff, you can make more definition of things like creases on the arms, or like if the feathers on the hat, you want to like add a little more definition there. You can just use this tidy up stage to give yourself a little bit more wriggle room for doing some highlights later on down the line. So I'm just going to tidy up that sky blue. I mean, it's only the kind of cuffs really here. The roundel didn't really need doing. I'm just picking out some of the raised areas, give myself a little bit of highlight. I also decided as well, he's got like some epaulets, so I thought, you know what, I'll pick those out, make that a nice little feature as well. So just neatly picked out. I was a bit like one side, like, oh, it's not got any, but then I realised you could just see bits near the strap, so I kind of did the little vertical sections on that as well. It took a little bit of patience to do that, but again, you don't have to. I just wanted to do that because I could see it through the strap, so I decided to pick those out. Then I'm just going to tie up the white or off-white with Brigade Grey again, just like the previous stages, going around picking out those raised areas. I also used the opportunity here to do like some scratches on those pouches as well, very much like we did with the leather pouches on the other Ratling. Just doing like some little scratches because that shades made it look a little bit like dirty and grimy, maybe a little bit battle worn or whatever, so you've got a bit of room to add some scratches in there as well. And of course, if you make mistakes, you can tidy it back up using some red. Make sure you give your brush a quick wash because red and white are a bit tricky when you use them in conjunction with each other, so do give it a good wash. I often find actually using a little bit of black after I've like used some red, wash it out, get some black, and then wash that, kind of gets rid of any like red staining. Just a little top tip there. But yeah, just going around picking out the knotwork on the hat as well. Sorry, shako. So what I'm going to do now is just get some of that greedy gold again and just add a little bit more bling. I mean, it didn't really need it, but it's quite a nice shiny gold. And that's what I like about the Army Painter golds, is they are very blingy. There are some golds out there that are quite dull, but these definitely have a lot more of a sheen to them, which I really appreciate. So I thought I'd make use of that by just going over those gold details. Nice and straightforward. And of course, just tied up the bits on the gas mask, the rebreather sections. And also I decided, yep, this is the point where I'm going to pick out those eye lenses a little bit. So get those silver to start off with because they've got like a bit of a ringlet around them. Tidy up any other little metallic details that I need to. And then of course, highlight the grey areas as well. Very much like we did with the last Ratling sniper, just do some grey highlights, some deep grey, and I can always wash those in a bit with a little bit of black. But yeah, just go around, pick out any folds that you need to. You can do it on the gun if you want to, and the shako, hat, it's entirely up to you. Now I'm just going to coat it with some grim black. Just, again, knock back those highlights because there isn't like a super dark grey, so I tend to use like deep grey and then just knock it back with a little bit of a wash, just so it's not too in your face. You can always mix a bit of black to it if you really wanted to, if that's the way you want to go about doing it, but I tend to just knock it back with a wash. And then for the little eye lenses, I just drop in a little bit of grim black to that, and that kind of does all the hard work for me. I don't have to sit there tediously being neat. And very much like the other Ratling, I'm just going to go around with a little bit of that grim black and just line up some areas that could just do with a little bit more punch in those recesses, maybe between the hands and the cuffs or whatever. Again, you don't have to like overdo it or not even do it at all. It's just something I like to do when I feel that some areas are a little bit lost or a little bit more wishy-washy. And of course, tidy up the skin. I didn't bother doing much with the highlight on the skin. I just thought I'd just tied it with some paratrooper tan on the raised areas and then leave it at that. I mean, you could go to the amber skin if you really wanted to, but I chose not to here just because, well, if you're doing an army of them, you could probably do it on characters maybe. But yeah, I just thought I'd just pick out the raised areas, toes, knuckles. I mean, he's got his gas mask on, so you don't even need to worry about his face. And then just that little blue pom-pom at the front of his hat. I just dropped in a little bit of red of the Wyvern Fury. Thought I'd add a nice little bit of focal point to it. And I thought that red could do with a little bit more love, so I decided to get some blood chalice and then just highlight up any like sleeves and folds and stuff like that. Pretty much like I did with the green jacket on the last one. I'm just doing that with this red jacket. So blood chalice is like a nice, slightly lighter colour to the Wyvern Fury. So again, I'm just going to go across, pick out raised areas, and then just, you know, make them stand out a bit more. Of course, don't forget to do the feather, plume, whatever you want to call it, on the top. Just, you know, you don't have to. It could be a very different material. You can leave it as it was. I chose to do it. And then I thought this model could do a little bit more love on those trousers, so I decided to keep that Ventrillian noble theme, make him look a little bit more smarter. I'll do some red stripes. So I just kept it a nice, simple stripe, made sure it was nice and even. However, this side with the gun in the way, I just kind of guessed because I couldn't really see. From a certain angle, you can see there's a bit of a red pin line there, but when the gun, you turn it around, you can't see how thick or wibbly wobbly it is, so I didn't need to stress about it. Simple as that. And there we are. Hubert Featherbottom Rumblebelly, Esquire of Ventrilia is now done. Now, I know what you're probably asking yourself is like, Peachy, what kind of self-respecting Ventrillian would send a small little Ratling into a hostile world where he'd need a gas mask? That's not for hostile worlds. That's for the Ventrillians cooking. It's that bad. They have to wear gas masks. We all know our Ratlings are very, very sensitive when it comes to cooking. And I think Ventrilia doesn't do a particularly good job. That's why he's got a gas mask. And I don't blame him. Now, I know what you're thinking, but they're not real Ratlings, Peach. Doesn't matter. They look like Ratlings. They have all the options that Ratlings have, and you get 24 of them for 25 quid. So, you know, I'm not going to turn my nose at that. And that's the great thing, I think, about a lot of the Wargames Atlantic stuff is you get a lot of figures in the set. So normally 25, 30 figures, but it's all the options you get after that as well. So in my previous video where I talked about kit bashing, these are great sets for doing that. So once you've like built some stuff up, you got all these extra heads, extra weapons, and in some places, I guess, torsos as well, depending on what kits you get loads of backpacks. There's all sorts of stuff. So if you are looking into getting into kit bashing, then Wargames Atlantic is a great sort of avenue for that. And of course, then they have Wargames Atlantic Digital. So if you wanted to get like cool 3D printed parts, if you have 3D printers, obviously, I do believe you can get them off My Mini Factory as well. So you can get some bits from there. So you can get the physical prints of them if you don't have a 3D printer. So that's pretty good as well. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. Now, another thing Wargames Atlantic I have at the moment as well is this little fellow up at the top here called The Last War. So it is a skirmish game set in the trenches. It's got a bit of a horror vibe. Some people might go, oh, that sounds a bit like Trench Crusade. It's definitely not Trench Crusade. It's a great little set, actually. You get like 4 different nations worth of sprues in there. You only need like 5 troops. It's based off the Forbidden Psalms stuff as well by Will Rahman Daltrey. So if you're aware of that, and I think it links in that with that as well. But the set comes with all the tokens. It comes with 4 different factions you can pick from with all the bits inside it. And then you just build up like a small group of trench soldiers, whether that's British, French, German, Russian. That's what you get inside the set to start off with. But yeah, you only need 5 figures. And it just looks like a cool, simple skirmish. I've not played it yet. I mean, I've got just got the set, so I've been looking through the book. And I really like the book as well because it has like a feel of like a little service manual. And it's like all typeface and stuff like that. So that's really, really cool. But yeah, you get everything you need in the box. I think it's 70 quid. There's also, it doesn't even say on the box, I've noticed this, doesn't even say on the box. You get like 2 sprues of just like weird gribbly things and alternate heads. So there's like these weird like trench maggots and like giant rat things. And then like some horrible grim looking heads and then some just alternate heads as well, which are also great for kit bashing. So you can make these weird monsters that are, or monsters, I guess they are monsters. It kind of makes, it's like, the best way to describe it, it feels like Silver Bayonet meets World War One. That's the way to describe it. So it's very different to Trench Crusade. If people are like, it just sounds like the same as that, I'm already into that. It's very different, but you get everything you need. I mean, it's great for kit bashing anyway, regardless of what you're doing, because you get all those extra bits. But yeah, from a rule system, I've not really delved into it from the rules point of view, but it does have vibes that I would have for like playing like Silver Bayonet or like Warcry elements, but you only need a handful of figures. I think it's 5 figures. So that's quite cool. So quite quick, easy to pick up skirmish games, World War One figures, throw in some horror, got yourself some quick couple of games in an evening kind of thing. So yeah, check out The Last War if that floats your boat. If you're not, you know, if you're like on the fence about Trench Crusade because it's a bit too far-fetched for you, this might be the thing for you as well. But yeah, I mean, if you're after 40k adjacent stuff, Wargames Atlantic is definitely the avenue you want to take because, well, they have the not 40k related Imperial Guard kits. So definitely worth checking out. Something someone mentioned to me a while back when I did Imperial Guard kit bashing video on the painting phase. They were like, oh, you should check out the Death Field stuff. I was like, what's Death Field? And I realized it was Wargames Atlantic, but they are really good. And you have very similar weapon styles and outfit styles. And I think the scale is exactly the same as well. So yeah, enough about that. As always, thank you for watching the video. I hope you picked up something useful in the little paint guide, but it was more just a big thank you for supporting me and following me. And big thank you to these folks, but not just my patrons, all of you that have been watching as well. It's a big thank you to all of you. I really, really appreciate it. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get to 50k, maybe do some weird challenge or something like that. But there is a lot more stuff on the horizon. I've been frantically painting up all sorts of random things. I mean, this time of year was like, there was a few sponsorships and just other videos I wanted to get done. And I've still got quite a few to do, but Sharp will return in 2025. I've got hopefully a couple more battle reports. Well, one before Christmas and then one straight after. And then we'll get back into season 2 of Sharp. We have to deal with Obadiah Hakeswell. And then I'm going to say it now in case anyone's on the fence like, oh, Peachy, you've just done a one-off. I'm not. I will do loads more sharp. I intend to do seasons till I die. And that's the same for lots of other battle reports. I mean, I've got some of the sentries from War Games Atlantic come from the post literally yesterday. So I could do like a Wolfenstein S World War II thing with a load of like cool looking, I guess, SOE agents mixed with Marvel stuff, maybe, to go down the route of Wolfenstein. Anyway, I've realised I'm waffling on again, so all these words can go by. I'm good at that. But yes, big thank you for supporting me in the last 8 to 9 months. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope to just keep making fun content that you enjoy. But yes, from the Peach household, Mrs. Peach, Little Peach, and me, a big, big thank you. And of course, it's that time of year, and a Merry Christmas too.